Welcome to the latest remote edition of RPPV News, bringing you stories from across the Mornington Peninsula. I'm Catie Sharp, and our top items for this edition are: the Peninsula joins the rest of Melbourne in another Stage 3 lockdown. The end seems nigh for Mornington's Centrelink office. A new contender adds pressure to AGL's gas pipeline proposal. A lucky escape from a Rye garbage truck. The Eagle chairlift's financial woes head for court, and Hastings boat ramp gets a welcome makeover. Now for the full stories. As we go back into lockdown, Shivani Pillay reminds us of the do's and don'ts of Stage 3.
Thanks, Catie. Stage 3 restrictions are in force for 6 weeks from the 9th of July for those in metropolitan Melbourne, which by definition includes the Mornington Peninsula. Stage 3 restrictions are also extended to the Shire of Mitchell. There is no change to COVID-19 rules in regional Victoria, which has remained relatively untouched since the pandemic. As at the 10th of July, Victoria recorded 288 coronavirus cases. As at the 9th of July, the total number of COVID-19 cases was 3,098. There have been 22 deaths. Of concern, there have been 477 cases that cannot be linked to existing cases, which indicates community transmission, and 922 cases that are currently active in Victoria. All but one of the 9 housing commissions that were in hard lockdown have been transferred or migrated to Stage 3 restrictions. The figure on the Mornington Peninsula, fortunately, has remained steady at 63. The New South Wales border has closed indefinitely to Victorians from the 9th of July. Federal Health Minister and member for Flinders, Greg Hunt, warns that a statewide lockdown would be considered if the situation in Victoria worsens. New South Wales residents can enter Victoria with a permit, but will need to self-isolate for 2 weeks upon their return to New South Wales. Hundreds of Australian Defence Force personnel and police have been deployed to the border. Unauthorised travel to the New South Wales state carries a maximum of 6 months imprisonment or an $11,000 fine. Here are the Stage 3 restrictions that apply for the coming 6 weeks. You must stay at home unless you are shopping for essential items and food, medical reasons and caregiving, study and exercise. School holidays have been extended by 1 week, except for VCE students, which includes Year 11, Year 12 and Year 10 studying VCE subjects. No visitors are allowed. Public gatherings are restricted to 2 people and your household. Retailers, supermarkets and hairdressers are open subject to density restrictions. On the peninsula, holiday accommodation and camping facilities are closed, except for those who reside there for emergency accommodation or work. Cafes and restaurants can only offer takeaway. Gyms, pools, playgrounds, skate parks, indoor sports centres, cinemas, beauty and care services are closed. Fishing, boating, mountain biking, tennis and equestrian are allowed. Beaches will remain open with swimming and surfing permitted, with a maximum of 2 people gathering and social distancing being applied. The Briars Wildlife Park and Sanctuary is open, with the general lawns being open, and Mount Martha Public Golf Course is also open. If you have symptoms, however mild, you should get tested. For further advice, call the 24-hour coronavirus hotline on 1800 675 398. You can also call your general practitioner or use the state government's online self-assessment tool. Testing is free if done through a public health facility or GP offering bulk billing. Testing clinics are located at Rosebud Hospital. The clinic is located at Eleanora House at the front of the Rosebud Hospital. and is open daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Frankston Hospital, open daily from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at 12 Hastings Road in Frankston. The Monash University Peninsula Campus drive-through at Murdoch Highway in Frankston, open daily from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Atticus Health Medical Clinic in Hastings, testing is in the clinic car park and tests are by appointment only. And the Rosebud Respiratory Clinic at the Rosebud Skincare Centre, testing at the clinic is by appointment only. Dr. Sally Shaw, speaking to RPPV Breakfast Show on the 7th of July, has raised the need for locals to get tested and the underuse of the clinic in Rosebud. Testing is free. Look for the big red COVID-19 sign at 1079 Nepean Highway, Rosebud, opposite the cinema. Daniel Andrews has emphasised that Victorians must stay at their principal place of residence and not stay at their holiday homes. We can't pretend this is over, he said. Unfortunately, it appears that people are flocking down to the peninsula in breach of the directions, causing locals to be furious. As at the 10th of July, there were no active cases on the peninsula and only 2 active cases in Frankston. Mornington Peninsula Shire Council has expressed their apprehension that the Shire has been included as a metropolitan council and that others in metropolitan Melbourne may interpret this as a reason to travel down to the peninsula and inadvertently push our local community health containment at risk. The Shire has also expressed concern for the disproportionate impact on local businesses on the peninsula. On ABC News, Mayor Sam Hearn called for additional police resources to go door to door to ensure that people weren't staying at their holiday homes. He pointed out that the Shire has the second largest population of people over 65, meaning that even day trips are unsafe. His concerns are shared by the Phillip Island locals who compared the number of Melbourne people arriving before lockdown to the Christmas holiday period. Meanwhile, the mayors of Albury and Wodonga are reeling at the decision to close the border. Mayor Anna Speedy said, "We have 100,000 people who interact as one economy and one community. To be directly affected because a few people in Melbourne have been selfish is very frustrating. The closure of state borders to Victoria has resulted in AFL teams heading north to Queensland, while the Hawks and Demons are set up in Sydney. And in light of the return to stage 3 restrictions, AFL Southeast has announced the cancellation of its 2020 junior football competition. Head of Southeastern Victoria, Richard Black, said, "COVID-19 has presented a very unique set of circumstances, and we need to ensure that our participants and volunteers emerge from the pandemic in a healthy state." The National A-League soccer season was in chaos after 3 teams, Melbourne Victory, Melbourne City and Western United, tried to leave Melbourne but were grounded at Tullamarine because of fog in Canberra. They have now been granted exemption but will have to undergo the 14-day quarantine period. And in optimistic, adventurous COVID-19 news, with the MP-NFL season off for 2020, 6 players have jumped at the chance to play football and go on an adventure to Port Douglas. 5 Crib Point footballers are driving 3,000 kilometres to play in one of the last remaining Football League seasons in far north Queensland. They arrived, went straight to the resort and into isolation for 2 weeks. Now, that was a great idea. That's the COVID-19 update. I'm Shivani Pillay. Back to you, Catie.
Thank you, Shivani. Mornington Centrelink looks set to be replaced with a DIY desk at the Mornington Post Office. A source of community protests when the closure was first announced, the temporary extension for Mornington Centrelink office expires at the end of September. Mayor Sam Hearn has written to Government Services Minister Stuart Robert to highlight the inadequacy of the replacement service as job losses soar on the peninsula. An independent investigation into local permits granted to businesses associated with John Woodman is drawing to a close. The investigations were ordered by Mornington Peninsula Shire last December in the wake of an IBAC corruption inquiry into the troubled developer, which led to the sacking of Catie Council. 20 years' worth of permits have been scrutinised. In the meantime, Shire councillors have proposed banning all donations to political parties and candidates in local and state government elections, or at the least banning donations connected to town planning and property development. The report is expected to be completed by the end of this month. Meanwhile, a similar audit of planning processes ordered by Frankston Council is complete. There were reportedly 2 high-risk findings made, including the absence of adequate conflict of interest declarations in planning procedures and insufficient records of meetings between planning officers and applicants. The key findings and recommendations of the report will be published on the Council website in the near future. There has been a twist in the ongoing debate over gas giant AGL's proposed gas import jetty and pipeline project at Crib Point. A rival power company, Viva Energy, has announced its intention to establish a similar gas import terminal at its Geelong refinery, adding pressure to AGL's need to gain approval. The AGL proposal is strongly opposed by some local councillors and environmental groups, including Environment Victoria. The Shire has expressed concern about the proposed jetty's impact on local migratory and threatened species, as well as on the town of Crib Point itself. AGL's Environment Effects Statement is currently available for comment on the state government's engagement website, www.engage.vic.gov.au. Submissions must be made by Wednesday, the 26th of August. The final decision will be made by Planning Minister Richard Wynne. Coming up after the break, a lucky escape from a garbage truck in Rye.
The first half of 2020 is thankfully behind us, and now it's all about the pace and extent of the recovery from recession. An update on our observations for the new financial year. The second half of last financial year was a devastating one, starting in January with the bushfires in full force amid catastrophic weather events, followed almost immediately by the global pandemic. As a result, our economy contracted 0.33% in the first quarter, but the contraction in Q2 will be at least 5%, the largest fall since World War II. The new quarter that we've just begun, however, should see a solid rebound, so the ability to reopen the economy and get businesses and employees back to work will be critical. The latest outbreak in Melbourne does threaten this process, with 20% of Australia's population suddenly back in lockdown, and may even risk a 2-speed recovery for a period. So the outlook remains most uncertain. Despite these challenges and this latest blow to confidence, the markets have been full of optimism. In the June quarter, the Aussie dollar rose 12.5% to just over 69 cents, higher than pre-COVID levels in February, which is closely correlated to consumer confidence, as the chart shows. And similarly, the stock market put on 16% for our ASX 200 in Q2, albeit off a low base, and the Nasdaq index in the US is at a record high. In the case of stock prices, the opposing forces seem to be rapidly improving economic data for May and June, plus seemingly limitless fiscal and monetary support from governments and central banks all around the world, versus the ongoing threat of further COVID outbreaks and geopolitical tensions around trade wars and technology disputes. So that will all keep volatility bubbling along, even as the economic data improves here, in the US and in China, which continues to look like a V-shaped recovery for our largest trading partner. Speaking of fiscal and monetary support, while the RBA kept rates on hold yesterday, as they probably will for another few years, the cumulative impact of their 3 rate cuts from last year and the 2 in March, with the fiscal stimulus packages, does seem to be working so far, with retail sales 4.5% higher today than pre-COVID and 6% higher year on year. So despite the obvious stress in labour markets, with official unemployment up to 7.1% and real unemployment probably closer to 11%, the stimulus measures have clearly helped. However, what this will all look like in 2 years' time has so many variables that simply no one knows. When will a vaccine be successfully trialled and made available? What will post-pandemic demand and investor appetite look like? What will the additional stimulus look like in size and nature? And how far will property prices dip in this new financial year, having fallen around 1% in the last quarter? As we suggested last month, capital city residential property fell 1.1% last quarter on average, but regional prices were up 0.3% for the same period. A taste of the changing landscape that we can expect post-COVID. And that's the market update from Bendigo Bank.
Battery World now open in Mornington.
We know batteries. We know our 75 D23Ls from our DIN 65 LHs. And we know which is best for you. We have the range and a spark no one else can match, because we live and breathe batteries. Those beautiful boxes and cylinders that power our lives and our passions. That's why we're the batteryologists. We're Battery World.
Battery World Shop 1, 43 Mornington Tyre Road, Mornington.
Welcome back. A young man had a lucky escape in Rye when an eagle-eyed garbage truck driver spotted him being tipped out of a bin and into the truck's compactor. The driver hit the emergency stop button, and local CFA crews rescued the 21-year-old, who was airlifted to the Royal Melbourne Hospital with serious but stable injuries. It is unclear why the man, who is not believed to be homeless, was in the 240-litre bin. A dispute has erupted between the company director and shareholders of Arthur Seat's beleaguered Eagle chairlift, which went into administration last March. At the time, problems were blamed on January bushfires and the coronavirus lockdown, but it has emerged that the company has made a loss of $6.3 million since its launch in 2016. The former CEO, Hans Brugman, claims company director Simon McKeon attempted to dodge an earlier agreement to help pay off the Eagles' debts. The claim will be heard in the Supreme Court. Work has commenced on a $1.6 million upgrade of the Hastings boat ramp. The current ramp will be fully replaced by a longer one and a connecting walkway built between the new ramp and existing floating pontoon. Dredging will also take place to ensure the ramp is accessible in all tides. The upgrade is due to be complete by October. Frankston Council has phased out the use of weed killer glyphosate. From the 1st of July, the management of weeds will be done through hand weeding, brush cutting and mulching. Low-risk herbicides will also be considered. The decision comes in the wake of $11 billion worth of US lawsuits that were settled last month by pharmaceutical company Bayer, the makers of glyphosate herbicide Roundup, which allegedly has links to cancer. A number of residential streets in Rosebud will be given a 40 km/h limit to help improve road safety. Up to 24 streets have been identified following a study that revealed residential areas of Rosebud, Dramana and Hastings had the highest number of casualty crashes in the Shire. And as we go back into lockdown, please remember to support local businesses as much as you can. Hairdressers are still open, so no need to sport that ISO look. The Mornington Peninsula Shire website has a list of local businesses offering takeaway, home delivery, farmgate sales, and online programs, services, and shopping. Visit mpbusiness.com.au and go to the Support Local Business page. If you are a local business, you can add your name to the directory on the same page. And now we go to Alana with the weather.
Hi, it's Alana with your 7-day weather forecast for the Mornington Peninsula, recording for RPPV FM. We're here at the Enchanted Adventure Garden in Arthur's Seat, and today, Wednesday, the 8th of July, we had a top of 14 degrees. It was a beautiful sunny day. And tomorrow, Thursday, the 9th of July, we'll have the same conditions, a top of 15, but before dropping down to a low of 4 degrees just tonight. It'll be partly cloudy in the morning and a chance of morning fog, but we'll have a beautiful sunny afternoon as well. On Friday, the 10th of July, we'll have a top of 15 degrees. It'll drop down to just a low of 5 degrees overnight, and there might be a slight chance of showers in the early evening. On Saturday, the 11th of July, it'll be a top of 13 degrees. It'll dip down to a low of 6 degrees overnight though, and there'll be a 70% chance of showers between 2 to 8 millimetres throughout the day. On Sunday, we'll have a top of 13 degrees. It'll be cloudy in the morning with a high 80% chance of showers, and expect again 2 to 8 millimetres of rain. On Monday, 13th of July, we'll have a top of 14 degrees. It'll drop down to just a low of 6 overnight. We'll see a partly cloudy morning and 40% chance of showers for the rest of Monday. On Tuesday next week, it'll drop down to just a low of 4 degrees overnight. It'll get to a top of 13 during the day, and we'll have a partly cloudy day next Tuesday. Enjoy your week and stay safe.
Now to Muzz with the weekly surf report.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome to this week's Mornington Peninsula Surf Report. Not much in store for us this next week. Today we'll have nice beach breaks, as you can see behind, but the swell's dying and the wind is picking up and it's a big tide, so the options are a little limited. Crowd hasn't come yet. Now that we're in lockdown, I assume we're going to get that again, so just everyone be nice to each other. It's always tough when there's a lot more people in the lineup. Later in the week we'll have nice beach breaks, but it's all going to run around the sort of 3 foot, but the wind's going to be west northwest, which won't be great. Maybe up the far end at Portsea, but so we'll see what happens. And to all the young guys from Rye who gave me some good feedback on the surf report, they said there was not much room for improvement, which was a good thing. So thanks guys, I'll see you soon.
And that's all from our team here at RPPV News, serving the community with the stories that matter to you. Remember, you can only go out to buy essentials, go to work or school, provide care or exercise locally. If you're feeling at all unwell, get tested and stay at home until your results are back. Wash your hands and shop locally to support our community. Keep watching and do tell your friends. Bringing you the news from coast to coast across the Mornington Peninsula, I'm Catie Sharp. See you for the next edition.